My position today, I'm the CEO of SunAgri Israel. So SunAgri is a technological company that is leading agrivoltaics in the world. It's a French company, and I'm leading the Israeli branch of it. So this is on myself. Now, why would Israel consider agrivoltaics? So first of all, I think that Israel and Taiwan are not that different in the matter of why we should consider agrivoltaics. I would start from the land scarcity. So we and yourself don't have a lot of land. So in Israel, we have 420,000 hectares of agricultural land. This is on the one hand, and the competition in land, like in any other country, is quite intense between agriculture, development of any kind, if it's a real estate or industrial zones, and then also open areas and ecological, because we don't want to have all this land filled with PV panels or real estate. So we're a small country. And the second thing, which is similar to you, but you might ask us, how is it possible? We are an island. Now, when you're looking on Israel, you see that we are not an island, that we are surrounded by countries, but not with all the countries the relationship are so good. And then it's not like in Europe. We can't just buy and sell electricity, which I think maybe in the future towards peace and the vision is going towards it. I hope with some of the countries, with Egypt and Jordan, it's towards it. But we need to produce the energy that we are consuming. So we have land scarcity, like you guys have land scarcity, from the same reasons. Now, regarding resources, natural resources, so we have really high radiance. We have, if it's a fixed tilt, we have 1,800 sun hours, and if it's a one axis, we are approximately 2,200 sun hours. At least this is what we wrote in our Excel business plans in order to allow it. So there's a really good PV conditions. On the other hand, we don't have much other renewable resources. We have a little bit of wind areas that is possible, but we cannot produce really big hydro plants or a lot of wind plants. So we don't have the rest of the natural renewable resources. And we do have gas offshore, which was revealed in the 2010 year, more or less. And since we're relying on it a lot, unfortunately, I can say from my side, my point of view. And if I will put for a second the energy share of Israel, what we produce exactly in the last 2 decades. So if we were right now in the year 2010, it would be mainly coal. All of our energy produced from power plants from coal. This is the only thing we did. Now, in 2011, 2012, there started to be explorations of gas in order to produce energy. And we can say that in 2016, only 6 years after, we already had 70% of our energy produced from gas, and then 28% from coal and 2% from PV. So such a country with such irradiance, high level, but producing only 2% of solar energy it's a shame, it's a joke. And it was mainly to logistics and politics and everything that I'm trying to fight sometimes against. And then since 2017, we did this ramp up of PV energy. And today, end of 2022, we had approximately 10% of PV production. So the coal is being reduced by each kilowatt hour that is being integrated by PV. The gas remain more or less stable on the 70%. And our goal is to reach 2030, the year 2030, with 30% of PV share, PV integration. So those three main issues, main topics, very high radiance. We do have goals for PV integration in order to fight climate change and having a low very efficient energy from PV, so the 30% PV production, and the land scarcity are the three main reasons of why the government initially even thought to have the agrivoltaics in its main goals. Now, I would just add that if those three main reasons allow the government to start thinking of it, I do think that the state of agriculture really demands for agrivoltaics, and this is why Israel is so suitable for it. First of all, we have all the different difficulties that are global difficulties that brings to risky and low profitability. So regarding labor, the higher aging, we didn't create this problem. It's a problem worldwide, and the average age would be definitely above 60, probably even above 65 for farmers. And the second is that there's not a lot of them. So we have I call it a upside triangle. So all of our grandfathers were farmers, and then out of our parents, 1 out of 10 is a farmer, and then in my generation, 1 out of 10 again is a farmer. So it's a lot less farmers to produce a higher amount of crops. The second thing is about climate hazards, and Israel is in a location in the world that is already suffering and will suffer more than the rest of the world from global warming. So extreme heats and droughts, this is something that we're not discovering it now, like in Europe, in the last few years. We're living it for the last decades. We're living under it, and this also brings us to look for many good solutions. And the third thing is about market. Most of our, there's some also for internal feeding, but a lot of it is export dependent. So market is changing all the time, and farmers in generally, to be a farmer is to take a risky / low profitability decision for your life and for your family. So these are the main difficulties that are definitely globally, and we're not own it. But the second thing that I think make us very suitable for agrivoltaics is that we are an important ag tech player. So there's a lot of startups and a lot of already technological big companies that are leading in the world in water irrigation, in robotics for farming, in a decision support system for farming, many things that are already very startup-y, and the technologic / agriculture is very developed. So those four main topics are turning us into nice candidates for agrivoltaics, I think, Israel. So already from the NGO, we were speaking with quite a lot administrative people from the Ministry of Energy and the Ministry of Agriculture, trying to explain the story of agrivoltaics, of what's going on in the world, of why Israel is a good candidate and why we should push it. And then in the new university, I really wanted to start pursuing a research that, again, will not go to the draw, we say in Hebrew. I don't know if it's a phrase outside, but I want to do a research that will have an impact on the reality. And then agrivoltaic was just, it was a clear thing that I'm going to do it on that. And right after I started my research, I won, together with my professor, grants from the government. So on the one hand, we convinced the government that it's important. So they started to put also grants of energy / agriculture integration. And then on the research hat, I tried to pursue these grants, and we won those grants to do a very wide research. Now, beside doing a research, beside having the money to pursue the research, was really important, because I had the personal phones of everybody that are writing the regulatory framework, because in the end, our research about a farmer's perception was to ask the right questions that are standing in the biggest concerns of the government. So if the biggest concerns of the Minister of Agriculture is that they will only do energy and they will not produce any agriculture, and this was their main concern, we really integrated it in a way that is suitable. So you're really doing a research for the government while they try to push the idea that we wanted. And maybe I will share a little bit about the research. So it was about, again, we don't yet have agrivoltaics in Israel, but we are trying to pursue it. And we try to understand how will farmers react to it, and how can we avoid market failures, and how can we avoid, not doing agriculture and just doing energy. We say in Hebrew, we call it agri-bluff. In France, you call it alibi voltaism. There are all kinds of different terminology for this kind of scenario. But in the end, we did a survey, which was more similar to an interview, because it was 30-minute interview with 170 farmers across Israel from 60 villages regarding their perception of agrivoltaics. So to understand, the main thing we tried also to understand is about, because it's new technology and they're doing agriculture, it has risk. Now, how much money will the energy company will need to give to the farmer in order to try this adventure and this headache, I always call it, of agrivoltaics, because it's an operational struggle to try and do agrivoltaics for a normal farmer. And then we were able really to quantify the risk of the farmer going to the adventure of agrivoltaics. And this in the end can also give you insights regarding the needed tariff for energy, because it's not just an energy plant, it's an energy and agriculture, and you need to cover everything. The research dealt with many things, from this, what I said now about the rent levels, and to what are the most important decision parameters. So the biggest decision parameter was quantity and quality yield. Will my farm hurt from it? Will I have yield reduction from it? And then we went to what will be your motivation? And this is the first question in economic studies. If you earn more money, will you take it to yourself and then just sit more time in your house, or will you take this money and invest more money in agriculture? So we try to tackle this question and many, many other questions that really gave us a holistic picture of what do they think, and when we will deploy it, how we shall deploy it. The regulatory framework is going to be super complex. Which kind of important bridges we need to put in the middle of these regulatory frameworks in order to avoid market failures and in order to bring best practices between government, IPPs, farmers. It is new. We don't have yet in Israel. It's not distributed yet. It's still many of the farmers, some of the farmers I came to while doing my research was already after the government submitted call for tender of agrivoltaic big program. So many energy companies already spoke with some of the farmers. So some of them were aware about the concept. Some of them were really not aware, and it was, a blank page. So I also started with 2 paragraphs on agrivoltaics, most objective as I can, without putting already all of my perception about positive agrivoltaics, etc., with opportunities and risks, plus putting a picture of agrivoltaics. And this is how the survey started, because this already gives you some kind of ground to what are you talking about? What is this? It's not possible. My crops need light, so so this is regarding that. And again, some of the people I spoke with were already speaking with energy companies, so they really wanted it. And some of the farmers heard it for the first time, and they were like, "I can't believe it's possible." Now, regarding the question you asked, secondly, what are actually the critical points? So the first, I think, is that there's a real agricultural need. So if there is only energy need, if only the energy sector will push this, So we will see more agri-bluff, as we say it. But if we will look on agrivoltaics as an agricultural tool, and there will be sitting together agriculture leaders and energy leaders, they would be able to find a good solution. Because in the end, energy deployment, the energy part is simpler. You go, you put your panels fixed or on axes, and then they create energy, and we know how it works. But regarding agriculture, there's so much complexities, operational and agronomic-wise, that if you're not putting a lot of effort, if you don't understand in the beginning that this is an opportunity for developing an agricultural tool, so your whole regulatory framework will be affected by it. Second, the legal aspect. So in Israel, for example, regarding the law, you cannot just go to an agricultural land and put PV panels. It's forbidden. You can't do it. So first of all, the law should allow it. And by saying allow, I mean where and how. And also where and how, it's a very complex question. I can speak on 1 hour, because you can say exactly where, and you can say only on places that has, it's a land designation is a whole world of a professional. And how to do it, it's also, do I tell them to which height to go, or do I just tell them yield goals? So this is the where and how. And secondly, it is really important to create a framework that helps avoid market failures. Now, again, in our market, in agrivoltaics market, when I speak about market failures, it's mainly about doing something that only produces energy. And then regarding agriculture, it's either produce something that is not really high value, or it's not even produced. And how do you enforce production of agriculture? How do you avoid ecological impact of agrivoltaics? Because again, it will have different land designation specifications than ground mounted, because it's agrivoltaics, it's with trees, it's not that ruin the ecology. On the other hand, because it will be allowed in more places, maybe the impact will be higher. So those are the two main questions about law. How and where is one, and the second is really how to create a framework that avoid market failures. The third thing that I think of is about the business model. In the end, agrivoltaics will not be able to compete. And again, I do think that today Taiwan PV is a competitive market. The tariffs are competitive. It's not subsidized like it used to be, I assume, a few years ago, like in many other countries. So agrivoltaics cannot compete with large-scale PV ground-mounted or with big PV rooftops. It has 40% higher capex, more or less, approximately, depends what you do, but it has 40% higher capex than PV ground-mounted. So it needs to have a dedicated scheme / tariff / again, it depends how your energy market works, but it needs a defense. And it needs a defense not only because we love agrivoltaics, so we want it to be subsidized versus large scale ground mounted. It needs to be subsidized because it has a different added value. Agrivoltaics not only creating kilowatt hour, it's not only creating energy. It defends, it protects the agriculture and adapt it to climate change. It gives water savings due to the shadow. It is an opportunity to really save the agricultural market if you think about macro decisions, because agriculture today in most countries is losing to the other sectors. So it has many other benefits. As it has many other benefits, those benefits should be translated into money. Because if it would not happen, probably. The fourth thing that I wrote for me is experience. And here I will really share a little bit about the pilot program that was done, that is in process. So usually when you speak with an energy company and tell him, hey, let's do many small pilots, that will cost lots of money in order to avoid agricultural failures, it's a headache for him. And he would say, no, we don't need it. Let's just go and do very large scale projects and ignore everything. So this would be the first reaction. Now, I do think that if you do few years of good pilots in a diversified way, you can avoid so many mistakes. First of all, for the energy company itself, because you would avoid a lot of failures, engineering failures, doing a structure 4 or 5 meters high with different wind loads, different technologies, farmers that are working under your panels. So there's a lot to learn from pilots only on the energy side. Now on the agricultural side, it's even more important because we never know. We always have the basic knowledge that we do have, but when you do something the first steps in agronomy, in agrivoltaics, it really depends on how you do your PV, what is the local microclimate, and by local I mean doing it in north of Taiwan will be different from south of Taiwan maybe. Again, I don't know exactly the locations, but in Israel you have many different micro locations. And which crop are you doing? So in order to avoid fatalic mistake that will waste a lot of money and energy for everybody, you should do some pilots first. And this is really one of the biggest thing the Israeli government have decided to do and is really unique about our agrivoltaic story, is to do pilot program, a very unique one, let's call it. So in April 21, they gave all the IPPs, all of us, 3 months to submit pilots, which is already not enough time, but they told us, you need to submit a pilot plan and write a research plan. You have 3 months to do it. Now, I was already 2 years into the agrivoltaic story, but all the other energy companies didn't know what is agrivoltaics. So they did Wikipedia agrivoltaics. Oh, it exists in Japan, in France, and they started to learn it while starting to secure land for pilots. Each pilot was a triangle of an energy company, a village, which has the farmer and the crop, and a researcher. So really, each pilot has those 3 basic bricks. What the government has asked us is to try and give us the biggest diversity. We want to see as many as different locations, different crops, and different technologies, which makes it really the most diversified pilot project program for agrivoltaics in the world. Each pilot was 1.5 hectare. And if we speak a little bit about figures, after 3 months, 460 pilots were submitted to the government together with 180 villages. Out of them, 164 pilots chosen. Now, the decision which one of them to choose was based, first of all, on a very detailed land designation suitability. So all the questions you usually ask about land designations, so they were all filtered by that. And what is the research plan grade? How much we want to have this crop, how much this researcher is serious, and everything you usually give grading for. Then there was another second filter, and we reached to 120 pilots. And then deployment, it's a question, how much will actually be deployed. But on the current status, 120 pilots are going to be deployed in Israel, which is really incredible, specifically for such a small country. Now, what was dedicated for this agrivoltaics pilot program? So first of all, the country did a master plan specific for those polygons. So all those 120 polygons were pushed by the government to allow everything connected into permitting, beside the final permit. But the real hard work was done by the government in order to allow it, and it was in a record time of 1 year. Master plans takes in Israel between 3 to 5 years. This was done in 1 year. They gave us a dedicated tariff for installation, for the selling the electricity, which on my perspective is not high enough. It's a 5.2 euro per kilowatt hour for 20 years. So it's for me, it's a big problem, because if they gave this price, it means that now all those pilots should be super competitive, which on the one hand, yes, it's good to do competitive, and then the larger scale will also be efficient. On the other hand, when you're trying to create innovation, but you're already starting in a pilot with a very low possibility to move right and left, so the energy companies will save money on behalf of being good enough in terms of agriculture, because they will not save money on energy production. They would save money on technology integration for agrivoltaics. They would save money and do less pilots, because if it's not a good investment, it's not a good investment. So why they should do so many of them? And the third thing that was dedicated, so this is also a crucial point. If you're already going to do pilots in Taiwan, one of the biggest things is let innovation breathe. You need to have money. It's not because the energy companies are greedy. They will get their money when they will create large-scale agrivoltaics projects. But when you create a small pilot, and it's been funded by the government, if you give just a little bit more, it's just release a lot of stress from the business plan. And the third dedicated thing was research funding of 3 years. So in addition to a dedicated feed-in tariff, the government gave 90 euro per pilot only for research. So only for salaries of researchers and people that are going and doing the research in the same time for 3 years. So 3 years, total of 90 kilos, so 30 per year, more or less. And this is really dramatic, because when I try to speak with our Japanese colleagues, with Makoto and with others, you understand that although there is already a real market and distributed market of agrivoltaics, there's almost no information sharing between them. So you don't know which crops goes better under which conditions, under which microclimate, or how they do their PV. Each one is doing whatever, not whatever, but each one did whatever he did. But there's not a lot of collaboration of information. Now, when the government is deciding to take it on itself, and they could have said, okay, we increase the tariff and each energy company do whatever they do. But they decided to fund it directly to the researcher. So the agreement of research is between government to researcher. And yes, there's also an energy company. But all this data in the end will go into a very big database that will have all this information. Again, there's a lot of complexities, publicly or not publicly. There's many questions that should be asked. But in the end, in the coming 1 year, there will be 100 pilots in Israel. And within 4 to 5 years, Israel will be a leader of agrivoltaics, because they are going to do research on all of those crops, locations, with a specific standardization between the research, so they can really, you can compare apple to apple, because it's impossible. When I tried in my research to do literature review and compare between projects, it's impossible, because PV, crop, and microclimate were different. It's impossible to compare. But when you do a very detailed standardization of the research, of the basic research, you can then compare and say, avocado will not work in the north on this technology, but in the south on this technology, it worked. And this is the main thing to try and do. And connection of all those projects should be by the end of 2024. Yeah, so first of all, I said some of them before, because it's really the basic story, but my first differentiator would be between what I call, or in the literature, they call it coexistence, co-locating, or cohabitating, which is crops next to panels. There's not a real symbiotic, they're not living together, just living one next to another. So for me, there's a big differentiator between this to agrivoltaics. And agrivoltaics is an agricultural tool that helps adapt agriculture to climate hazards. This is the basic notion. that if you're able to pursue it, if you're able to convince the Minister of Energy, Finance, Agriculture that agrivoltaics can be an agricultural tool and it has many added values, the rest will be great. You will get a bigger tariff, the law will be more flexible, you will get incentives, but the first biggest obstacle is to understand it. And this is something that I think Ministry of Agriculture in Israel really put it as an important thing. The Ministry of Energy and Finance, they're speaking this way, but not all their actions, not all their decisions are really considering that this is a dramatic agricultural tool. If it was a dramatic agricultural tool, they would give more subsidies. It would be considered differently. So this is the first big point. The second big point, which I think, again, this is super unique to what has happened in Israel. And by the way, it's also super unique for Israel to have it, is the Intergovernmental Committee. When I told the French company that I'm going to bring a tour with 18 people from 6 different ministries, they fall from their chairs. They said, we can't put 2 representatives from 2 ministries in the same room for more than 1 minute. It's impossible. And what you did is a miracle. Now, it's not my miracle. It's really something happened. There was enough in mutual incentives from the different ministries, the energy and the finance and the agriculture, but along them, the legal and the planning and land authority, land electricity, all of them saw some kind of a mutual benefit in having a good agrivoltaics market. So they were really round table for more than 2 years, meeting every 1 or 2 weeks, putting all the challenges, what we need to solve, how we should solve it. They were, again, I was not part of the committee because it's only a government delegates, government decision makers. But I never saw such a committee that works together so well and trying to solve the issues together and not just trying to maximize their own incentive as the minister of. If you can create this is one of the biggest, this is the thing that allowed the pilot program to be alive. Maybe I will be a little bit genderistic in my next thing that I would say, but this governmental committee was led by 2 women, one from the energy and one from the agriculture, and they really wanted to solve it, and they put ego outside of the room, and every time ego was entering, they just kicked it out, and they were strong enough in order to have real conversations with real content. And I see your face, it's funny, but really what makes progress is understanding between people. And the regulatory framework of agrivoltaics brings a lot of too complex decisions to take because you have too many incentives from different directions. So this was my second one. The third one is obviously the experience. So when they decided that they're going to push agrivoltaics, they also decided they're going to push a pilot program that will teach a lot, and we will learn a lot from it, and we will learn a lot from it to deploy in Israel. We will learn a lot from it to go and do it outside. And Israeli, a lot of the agtech and energy companies are working in Europe, in the States, in Africa. So if it's going to work here and we will have a really massive, diverse pilot program, it would give us a lot to export knowledge after. And then last one is the learning and sharing information on both solutions, which mean technological and agronomist, but also legal frameworks from other countries is a must. Because again, this challenge is a global challenge, and I think Agrivoltaic International conferences every year is a bless because it brings people from all around the world, and then I can speak with all of Taiwan dear friends, and there's a lot to learn. Now, obviously, something will be different. Definitely the sociology should be adapted into your society, but many of the challenges are similar. So go to learn it in how it's been done today in France, in Germany, in Italy, that are now dramatically, they decided that they're putting, I don't remember how much exactly money, but they will subsidize 20% of each real agrivoltaics project that will be deployed by 2026 in Italy. So there's a lot to learn. And seeing it also with the eyes, because Zoom is not enough. When you go and see real projects, when the intergovernmental came and saw the project in France, their eyes were really widened up, and it's both important for knowing it's feasible, but also for having fun together, 5 different ministries, and then go and deploy it. So this is my main advices.